Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Karen. Let's see. We are in July. I'll see you at Reno Laugh Factory the 16th, and I will see you at the Maine Comedy Festival in August and at the Tahoe Biltmore Paracon in September, Ann Arbor, October. That's it. You know what it is. So I'm getting right to it today. All good things start with I got a call from Jessa Reed, and that's what happened. I got a call from Jessa Reed. She and I are always talking about the transurfing or jumping realities, all these things. And believe me, that's not just on the podcast. It's going on all the time. We have the most... I love any conversation or any text from her starts with something. And I learned something else about alien school, and I'm like, I'm in. So, she says the transurfing guy who might get, it's not Vlad, right? It's Vlad. How do you say it?
The author of the book?
Yes.
Vadim Zeland.
Vadim, not even close. Vadim.
I just learned it. I'm from the South, so I mispronounce everything. It takes me a lot of times.
So Vadim put out a new book, and she told me about it immediately, and I was like, I can't read. Is it out on audio? And she said, not yet. Within a day, I found it, and I said, no, this guy that I always listen to on Transurfy, Bootsy Green, reads it. So the next day, I get a call from Jessa that goes, hey, I made friends with Bootsy Green. And then I was like, Greenwood. And then I was like, on my podcast. So today we have Owen Hunt, Bootsy Green with us to explain so much about what is going on, how you can listen to these books. So Owen, thanks for coming on the show.
Karen, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me. I'm so happy to be on your show. It's awesome.
Oh, great. Well, now first, it's a great story about how you got in, tell me you started, where did you get the book? How did you get involved? I think it's great how you got involved with Vadim.
Sure. So, completely happenstance, no affiliation whatsoever. I found the book just randomly through somebody else's product because I'm just an incredibly curious person. So I was like, it was actually like I'm just going to be like bare at all, Karen, why not be honest? It was like a social, like how to develop social skills product that somebody was talking about.
Oh, that's great.
And like talking to women and just trying to develop, I think it was called like the social circle blueprint or something like that. And I'm watching this and this guy's talking about, how to talk to people and how to build your army or whatever. And then he mentions this book in passing, like really kind of under his breath. And somebody's like, what was the name of the book again? And I was like, so I wrote it down. He's like transurfing or something. So I wrote that down. And then as soon as I finished that video, I didn't even go back to that product. When I found transurfing, I just consumed it. I found it, the first book on PDF. And it was the most, it just answered more questions than any other self-help book that I've ever read. And I've read a lot. I would say my bookshelf is full of, Napoleon Hill and tons of other, just tons of stuff, like stuff from the early 1900s, the Kybalion, anything that I could find on self-development, anything that I could find in spirituality, I would just consume it.
And so I'm with you. This one not only makes sense, but it's almost like, I'm not a fan of The Secret because I think it's just that it's not, this explains so much.
Yeah, I think the big difference is between this and The Secret. And The Secret just takes basically two ideas from the Kybalion, which has 7 natural laws in it. And it kind of smooshes them together and says, oh, here's the law of attraction. No, there's never been a law of attraction. That's not a real thing, at least not historically, right? I mean, we could name anything, whatever we want. But historically speaking, there's no, that doesn't exist. There's the principle of polarity. There's the, as above, so below. The Kybalion. And I think what The Secret did is just took those and made them real easy to digest. But there's no action taking in The Secret. And that is the biggest difference between The Secret and something like transurfing, because there's really not a whole lot of practical application in The Secret. It's like, hey, I'm just going to visualize a check coming in the mail, and then a check comes in the mail. But that's not.
If it was that easy, we'd all have checks in the mail today.
Everybody would do it. Sure.
Yeah.
And there's tons of things that we battle through in sort of emotional or in the spiritual or metaphysical realm, such as desire and things like that kind of get in our way, a lot of times we, even create our own obstacles. But when I found the book, it wasn't available as an audiobook. And I had read Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance on my YouTube channel and the Kybalion. And just because those are my two favorite all-time books ever. And as soon as I found it, I sent an email to the publisher and I didn't hear anything back. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I recorded the first 3 chapters and posted those. And then I started to get people started to listen to them. They're like, hey, will you do the rest of the chapters? So I did. And that was a year's worth of work. It's 24 hours worth of audio. It's a lot.
Yes, and I have to make just a hair of a joke, because I listen to you on my bike every day when I go to yoga, and I remember in the first one, at one point you took a sip of soda. I heard the straw went.
Well, even I've had a decent sense of humor most of my life, and somebody even commented about that on my YouTube channel, and somebody else commented on it like he just doesn't get it, right? Like it's almost like I don't know how to explain it. Like you can't take anything too seriously, right?
Right. And you know what? You did it. And here's the thing. Like I said, dyslexics all over like me. I couldn't consume it. My friend bought the book and she said the translation was choppy or it was hard. So, I'm grateful that you did it. And I'm also going to throw in something that I didn't say in the beginning. Owen is a comedian and I don't think that's by design. And we'll talk about that in a minute, that it's not a surprise to me that a person that is partaking in comedy would also be sort of the bullhorn for this.
Well, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy about that. Well, see, to me, I've always looked up to comedians, and my whole life, I watched Saturday Night Live and Richard Pryor. My mom would let me watch Eddie Murphy Raw when I was a kid and stuff like that, and George Carlin and Bill Hicks. So I've always been Bill Hicks is like my spirit animal, and so I've always been into all of that. And whenever I got into comedy, I didn't realize, I have a friend named Carlos Valencia, who's like the funniest man on the planet. He just can't turn it off. And then in July, another guy came and he stayed with me. His name's Jason Webb. He works out at the Comedy Store, and he's a big sweetheart. And, I started talking to him, and I'm talking to him about this kind of stuff, and he's into futurism and all these kind of things. So we're talking about metaphysical stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that guy just got off stage. He was on stage for an hour and a half, just killing. And then he comes off and he's just like the most regular sweetheart of a guy. So I was like, I can do this. I don't have to be funny all the time. I didn't even realize comics really wrote their own sets.
That's funny.
I just like went up there and just launched it away,
And you know what people don't realize too is comics aren't all on the time. There's a craft and there's a technique to it. So a lot of times people think, oh, I'm funny, I'm going to get on stage. And it's like, well, go ahead. I always say, go ahead. And
Absolutely.
then because there's a lot of work to it, but I think by design that comics are people that are either learning to have a voice or not afraid to have a voice. Like this, I always laugh because this podcast here is all the way out. We're talking elemental spirits, fairies, UFO conspiracies. We're all on that side. And I know there's some people that are like, are you okay talking about that? And I'm like, why wouldn't I be? But I forget I'm not going to work in an office.
Right.
So it's not the other things like I think the worst life is the repetitive life. And when people, I feel bad. I don't know how they go into the work every day or, you know what I mean? So I think it's, and I'm sure this is the spirit in you that was like, I like this. I'm putting it on YouTube, soda and all. Well, there it goes.
It absolutely was that. And, if I could even backtrack a little bit further, Karen, before I got into transcripting and all the self-help stuff, I got into the conspiracy thing super deep, and it made me really depressed. And I had to start, I was like, well, hell, I've got to find something to get me out of this because I'm so depressed. I'm like living in my dad's basement by this point. I'm like watching the 9/11 towers just fall on repeat on YouTube, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I had to get myself out of this somehow. And ultimately, Transurfing really was the last of those that I was grasping for. And these questions are questions that I've asked my entire life too. And like based on Jessa's experience, it's like she went and died, and then she came home. She came back to Earth, and then like all of these principles are reflected in what she learned.
Right.
So, so that's kind of neat, and that makes me feel a little bit less self-conscious too.
Yeah.
About like going into this, because one other thing that I will say about comedians is comedians are absolutely 100% the smartest, sometimes the most cynical. They're the most logical. Put it through a filter, test it. They're more scientific than scientists are, because if it's not true, they will reject it immediately. So, you know, I have a
Genuine.
lot of respect for comics in that, because nobody thinks quite like for themselves like we do, because you know, we have to be honest with ourselves. Otherwise we don't have material.
Well, you know, what's funny is, so I've always been into paranormal investigation. I read tarot cards. I do all that stuff. I just started taking classes in parapsychology, which is actually the science and the lab of it. And there's a very interesting, when we get in, talking about, Tufti, there's something, it's very interesting, something she talked about with, moving objects that we talked about in class that I was like, holy crap, that completely lines up. But we'll get to that after. But okay, so you are putting it up there. People are like, put up more. And then what happens?
So at that point, all these other channels start taking my videos and re-uploading them.
That's what I thought, because, you know, Jessa was watching it on one thing and I was watching it on another, and then it kind of came down to one channel, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I think that Vadim may have made the call to take the ones that I read off of the Vadim Zealand official one as of now.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. Renee has contact with him, but he doesn't really like to be in the mainstream, and he doesn't like to do interviews and things like that. He just kind of wants to be left alone.
Okay, and Renee is his agent.
Oh, and so Renee, I'm sorry. So Renee is the transurfing certified trainer of North America, and she's the one she's been bringing a lot of us together who have been influenced greatly by this, and we're starting a YouTube channel that may be a sort of official, North American transurfing one with a lot of different contributors. We have about 25 different people who are going to be making videos and doing stuff like that, and I'm uploading the books as well to that channel.
Also. Oh, great. Okay. So, and that's what we all want to look for, is you want to look for Bootsy's channel and the Transurfing channel, which we're going to put in the notes, and we're going to plug this at the end. So you get a call from them, correct? And they're saying, do it under our umbrella.
Well, they're saying, we love what you're doing. Thank you for doing it. We want the message out there. They want people to understand how to create their own reality, because that's best for everyone. Like, then we can build a mutually beneficial reality and better and better and so on. So the intent is really pure. So they said, hey, read Tufti, put it on your channel. Do you mind putting it on this one? And I mean, they really just giving me the option to do. And Tufti is not even, neither is Transurfing. They're not available on Audible. They're just for free on YouTube as audiobooks.
I saw that. And I'm going to backtrack for 1 second. So everybody knows Jessa and I did the 2 episodes on Transurfing, which we just went over, because I actually want to jump to Tufti pretty quick, because that's my current fascination. But I love, because you had 78 days of transurfing, right? So for people that don't know, transurfing is sort of, I would describe it as, this is how the universe works. And if you really want to manifest, this is what you have to know, and this is what you have to do. Is that a good?
I would absolutely agree. And transurfing really goes in depth with a lot of the nuances to it, like our desire and how our desire gets in our way, and obstacles that we create ourselves, mostly even unconsciously, as well as ideas, structures, and objects in the physical world that distract us from our main purpose, which is to listen to our still small voice, or what he calls the rustle of the morning stars.
Yes. And it's very, you have to listen. I'm very big on pulling my bike over to go back a minute when I listen, because it's so in depth and it's really explained well, but it's almost one of these things where you have to listen to each question. And folks, if you're new to the podcast and you want to start at the transurfing, it's episode 51, like Area 51. 51. It's episode 51 with Jessa Reed. I know. So it'll say Jessa Reed on there, but oddly enough, somebody goes, was that like Area 51? I was like, no, but perfect way to remember it. So, yes. And even the concepts of pendulums, of energy pendulums is very, you have to really listen and sort of process it. And I feel like all the information from this book is not just taken in and you comprehend it. I feel like it literally makes shifts in your body or your consciousness. Do you know what I mean?
I absolutely agree. 100%. Yes, I do. I've seen things that it's like almost things turn different shades or something like, and if you can stop and just like pay attention, you will see that you're kind of going from reality to reality. You know, there are these different, like there's small shifts. It's incremental, but it is happening. We're all forming what he calls the layer of our world, and those overlap with each other. So there's going to be some interesting things that happen when our consciousnesses sort of commingle, right?
Yes. And I know that people know that I've always said 2018 through 2020 will be the most transformational years, but it almost is like what you said. The more people that have this information, like, I don't know if maybe it's just my circle who is into all this stuff, but manifestation is happening like that. It is happening in a snap, and you have to watch your words because you will get exactly what you're sending out there.
It's crazy how quickly these messages are happening. Like the wave, I guess, is just really starting to pick up, and people are figuring it out, and they're starting to put these practices to work. Anybody can do it. It's the death of the guru. We're not about that. We're about creating our own reality and helping each other and giving the world. Really, that's a big fundamental thing in the Transurfing book is like, what does the world need? And if you give that to the world, then the world's going to give you whatever it is that you wish. That's one of the more advanced topics. But I mean, you know, a lot of these ideas we've heard in other books, but he just uses kind of different metaphors and talks about some of the nuance, aspects of these particular principles. So it's just the best sort of model, I guess, that I had been able to find through all the research and reading that I've done.
Right. And everybody that just checked your phone, I'm sorry, I didn't have it on silence. That was my text message, not yours. Sometimes the ding goes off on the recording. Everybody goes to check their phone. I'm sorry, that was me. So you were in a dark place and you start to read this and put it on. And did you kind of like already just start to feel hope, or things started to change? Like, how did your story unfold after you found this?
Well, I was doing better. When I found Transurfing, but when I found Transurfing, it really started to come together. You know, I had just started a business. I almost had this mentality when I found Transurfing that, if I can't beat them, then I'll join them, right? I'll start my own business. I'll be successful in my own way, and I'll do what he talks about in the book is I'm going to make it through inner intention. I'm going to fight my way toward my goal and elbow whoever gets in my way and all that. And then I found Transurfing and I've always been an artist, a musician, actually. So, you know, I was working on that and trying to make some changes within myself, and I couldn't seem to undo. Like, for instance, cigarette smoking was something that I quit 2 years ago, and I didn't think I would ever quit cigarette smoking, like ever. But Reality Transurfing was the reason why I was able to do it because of the pendulum idea particularly. So at that point, I'm reading the book, I'm putting it online, I'm working at a bar and working on music, and my drummer has a baby. And so our band breaks up, and now we've got to figure out what exactly we're going to do. And so I started a different podcast called Behind the Dial, which is kind of like a variety show podcast, where we brought friends of ours who are in bands and stand-up comedians, and we feature them each in the show. And it's kind of like it's packaged like as if you're surfing the radio dial. So it's almost like infinite, you know, jumping realities as you just turn the dial, because all of a sudden, and then you'll go into a sketch and then it'll go into some stand up. And so that was where I got my first taste of what the comedy world was like. So that was about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. We started talking about making the show last March, and then our first episode came out with my friend Carlos Valencia on May 28th, which was like Memorial Day of last year.
Oh, it's great.
Unfortunately, we had to put that show on hold. One of the guys who's making it with us, his wife had to have a surgery. She's okay. As a heart surgery. But it's kind of a big deal. So we're just kind of on pause.
Oh, good.
For that.
Yeah.
For
Sending
now.
her good vibes. Yeah. It's,
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, everyone out there. But creatively, we all started to see, we all started to climb over a precipice because we're allowing ourselves to be silly and really just opening up to the universe and creativity, as it were. And the Deem also lays out a really good creative plan in the book as well. So that's incredibly helpful, to paint a layer, take a step back, go away, come back, paint a layer, take a step back, go away, and paint a layer, and on like that. As well as he talks about dealing with the muse, which, there's other ways that people describe it. But what he says is like, if the muse won't show up, then start without her and she'll get upset and stomp her feet and show up. So it's basically like doing morning pages. That's something that I've been doing for the past couple of months. And,
I am so big on morning pages in automatic writing. In fact, I think I'm getting some Toofty in my morning pages.
Cool.
I think I'm a little afraid of her. And in fact, you know what? This is the perfect spot. I'm going to take a break. Hold that thought about your morning pages and we will be right back, folks. Hang on. I have a new favorite thing. It's my ring from Copper Case Jewelry. I did a show in Colorado, met a wonderful young man named Casey who told me he made crystal jewelry. So I'm in. That's all I had to hear. He makes raw crystal jewelry using copper electroformulist techniques. Do I know what that means? No. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing those words correctly. All I know is I love the final product. It has become my favorite ring. And I know you're thinking, crystal ring, that sounds kind of clunky and sharp. Is it going to be heavy or is it going to get caught on my sleeve every time I put my coat on? Absolutely not. It is the most delicate, perfect size ring. I even wear it through yoga, and it's uncomfortable to wear jewelry in yoga. Not this. You got to check out Casey's pieces. Go to @29 Copper Case on Instagram and you can see all his new work. You can also email him if you want something special at 29coppercase@gmail.com. Check it out. I know you're going to love it. Okay, great. So so we left you off. You were talking about creativity and your morning pages. Okay.
Yes. So I've been doing that, and just my creativity has developed a lot. And through doing the podcast for my 36th birthday, I was like, well, I'll try stand up for the first time ever in my life for my 36th birthday. And so I wrote in and got in on an open mic night, and I wrote a set and went up and did all that. And since I went up the first time, I really enjoyed it, and I've been doing stand up since then. And then Renee, so that's about a year ago. So I just got back from California in what is it? Now it's June. So I just got back from California at the beginning of May, and I was like, what am I going to do? I had work out there. I was working at Coachella for a friend of mine who's a carpenter. His name's Tim Casebold. He's awesome. He's an artist as well. But so I get home, and I usually work in the film industry. I'm a producer, and I can do a lot of different things. I've worked. I've actually worked on a movie that Eric Andre is coming out with in October with Little Rel and Tiffany Haddish called Bad Trip. I worked on that movie. I was a producer for that. So I'm looking for work as soon as I get home, and I can't seem to find any work at this point because we've got this thing called the heartbeat bill that's being tossed around here in Georgia, which definitely not a big fan of, but the film industry is definitely really not a big fan of it. And people are just standing up and saying, we're not going to post jobs in Georgia and all of this stuff. So basically there's this whole industry that kind of became reliant. And now because of this piece of litigation, people are like, what am I going to do? But as soon as I got home, I just tried to do what the book says, keep myself positive, do as many things as you can. That's a big thing between Transurfing and The Secret is like you stay positive, but you do things, right?
Yeah, don't give up.
Well.
Don't give up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm applying for jobs and doing everything that I can. And maybe 2-3 days later, Renee calls me, and she is the head of Transurfing in North America. And she says, hey, my name's Renee Garcia. I'm like, I know who you are. I've seen your Instagram posts. And we chat for a while. And she's like, I'm thinking about putting this channel together. so that we can break these concepts down so they're small chunks and people can, digest them and they're not so overwhelming. And we want to make it more practical too. That's a big mission for the Transurfing TV channel as well as the podcast, so that, there's a lot of theory in transurfing. I mean, it's 1,000 pages of theory. So how can we break this stuff down and make it applicable and useful to people, and they can just, boom, they can try it out immediately, hopefully. That's the idea.
And I have to poke in two things here for this is another good thing about the universe and sort of getting where you need to be is sometimes you said two things that could have been perceived as negative that got you to where you are, which was number one, there wasn't work, so you weren't distracted by something else, and number two, the band kind of went on hold. So it was almost like that the path was opening up for you to be where you were supposed to be.
Well, as soon as I read the book, I was like, I'm going to practice this. And that's why, I got practical 78 days, practical transurfing. And honestly, I had to brainwash myself a lot because I'm a stubborn guy. Maybe not the smartest too. So I just had to continuously go over these concepts and continuously be mindful and constantly remind myself of what I'm trying to do, the kind of reality that I'm trying to create. So when John had his baby, because back at, a few years ago, I would have been irate. And it's like, dude, there's nothing to be mad about. This is a life to celebrate,
Right.
Get over yourself, Owen. I mean, come on, dude. But I was ecstatic for him. It seemed like the right thing. And we just transitioned from that into another creative endeavor that actually I think was just as much fun and equally as rewarding. And we also got to collaborate with new people like stand-up comedians and new bands and have them come on. And, we do silly skits and sketches and just really just be kids in a lot of ways, and that was so freeing. And so there was never any looking back regarding that. Even at that point, because I had been practicing transurfing for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years at that point. And as soon as I found the book, I read it a couple of times before I read it for the YouTube channel. So I could joke and say I've read it more than the editor.
Well, you know what, though? You're right, though. Sometimes you have to listen to it a couple of times. There's so much information I don't think we can process. I think you have to listen to it a couple of times for it to sink in.
You do. And I think that it's really exciting what Renee has in mind, as well as Angel Gomez, who's the other gentleman who is working with, and I've been doing work with him because it's really his passion to be look, dude, we just recorded the second podcast. The first one comes out, Reality Transurfing Podcast comes out July 1st with Renee. And the second one is going to be with Angel. And the title of that episode is Why Reality Transurfing Doesn't Work.
Oh, and this will be perfect because you're going to be out right after July 1st. So everybody can catch that first one. The Reality Transurfing Podcast, right?
That's exactly right. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Everybody go get the first episode right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I can't wait. And everybody knows I tape ahead. And also I'm just going to put this in there one more time. People that want to change their lives. It's almost like sometimes when I do a tarot reading, it can be the same questions over and over a couple times because people don't realize this is not in a snap. You got into this hole for how many years you've been alive. It took you 40 years to get into the hole you're in. You got to you got to reprogram your mind, period.
That's right. It takes time. And you've got to be patient with yourself too, and give yourself that compassion and understanding to say, it's okay. Look, I was conditioned to be the way that I am. And what I think happens is when we really focus on the truth about ourselves and our deepest parts of ourselves, where our hearts are, then the social conditioning layers just kind of peel themselves away and they just kind of erode. And we are starting to shine more and more as who we genuinely are. So when I first started comedy, I was almost combative on stage toward the audience, which is not who I am at all. I'm like the sweetest little, I'm like a jelly donut, so for me to go up there and start, getting into word fights about semantics is the dumbest thing I could ever do. But instead, it has taken me a little while. And of course, I've got a long way to go. But, the other day, a buddy of mine, he hurt his back, and he wanted to come see this show that we put on. I did 15 minutes at a house party, and he wasn't able to because he hurt his back. So I sent him the tape, and he was like, "Dude, you were yourself on stage."
Yeah.
And I missed about 10 punchlines. I mean, but I
right. Well, you know what? Too especially in comedy when we first start, you don't realize what a vulnerable state that is. And so what was your old reaction to vulnerability? It might have been combativeness or pulling back or something. But you talked about social layers coming off, which is I'm going to grab that as my segue to Toofty, so tell everybody what the new book Toofty kind of is, or who she is.
Sure. So Toofty is a goddess. She comes to us and basically starts whipping us into submission like a spiritual BDSM kind of lady, right?
And
she is scary.
And Vadim channeled her, correct?
I don't know the answer to that. They're shooting a lot of videos with a lady who's playing Toofty. So I don't know if Toofty is more of a play on a goddess, or if he actually did, or if he's a smart comedian and channeled it and then fake put a different name on it. Like Jessa says, oh, well, it could be a brain tumor, right? Or it could have been the meth. So, put that justification on there, like me sucking on a straw in the middle of a potentially life-changing book where people are like, wait a second, do I take this seriously or not? Right. So I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know that Renee knows. I don't know who would know either, but
and just a weird question.
It's written from her perspective toward humankind.
Right. And so has Renee met Vadim? Does anybody know Vadim? He's very quiet. He doesn't want to be famous. He just wants to do his thing and get it out there. But do we know anyone that's met him?
Renee has met him. Yeah. Our first episode, we're going to talk about who is this Vadim Zealand character that looks like he just walked back in from the Matrix. He's got the space glasses on and all that. So he looks cooler than all of the rest of us.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah. And because I even find, because, I work all in the metaphysical paranormal world. And I know they do, if this is sort of a joke on it, there's something that he got very right, which is they have a completely different set of, I don't want to say ethics and morals because that sounds like a judgment. They have a complete different constitution of how they deal with people. And the way she's addressing all of us like we're stupid, which if she is a goddess, we are compared to her. But right. She also, at one point in the book, she says, I love you so much I could kill you.
Yep.
And I was like, that's where that could be the joke, or it could literally be something like, I love you so much, I'm going to take you out of your body. Like it.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it really could be. Can you imagine the frustration? I mean, it's like we feel with our dog or our cat where but you love them so much, but then they get sick and they poop all over the kitchen floor or something. And it's like, dang it, I could kill you, but I'm not going to do it. It's a similar kind of dynamic that's being established with that book. It's saying, hey, listen, you guys are snails. She calls us snails a lot. And, you're binary, right? Like you're 1 or 0. You react in a way that's like a clam, like you close your shell, you open your shell. And that's all you are. You have no depth. You can't see past this sort of 2 to even 3 dimensional reality. You can't see what's beyond this. And it's frustrating to her. So she's trying her best to be compassionate, I think, in the book.
Yeah, it's very, I kind of get on a roll with it, and I think I get the information, and then she calls you a name, and you're like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, it was off-putting to me at first. And then, honestly, people have been asking me to read Toofty for so long on my YouTube channel, and I was like, well, it's written from a female perspective, and, I would just think of a lot of excuses of why not? And ultimately, I started reading it, honestly, I think it was 2 days before Renee called me, because I got home and I was looking for work and I was like, well, there's nothing. I guess I'll just read Toofty. And I edited it myself. I didn't hire anybody. It was that is kind of murderous, to hear your own voice and have to edit it. It's just, and I do a lot of audio stuff with a background in music. I'm decent with engineering and stuff like that.
And probably more picky than most of us.
Very, I can be very picky. The first editor that I hired, I had to basically send him a chapter back and say, please don't do what you're doing, because he kind of like cut away a lot of my mouth noise and breaths and stuff. And it didn't sound natural to me. But I have plugins like Slate plugins that are really nice that take those kind of things, and minimize them, but they're still there. And if you listen to something that's unnatural and it's edited in a certain way, you'll be put off by it, but you won't necessarily know why if you don't have an ear developed. But you still unconsciously will be deterred. You're like, I don't know what it is that I don't like about this, but I don't like it, Right.
And also, because I'm only to, I think, your first video on this, which is a little over an hour. So it was kind of like the introduction and the plates. I'm on the plates. Okay. So I haven't got that much further, but I think I'm going to reach out with this question, and you may not be able to answer it. And you might be like, well, you kind of got to fix the whole thing, because she's saying, we can't change the film, but we can change the future. So I'm in this reality right now, and I am to be awake. I am to say, I am aware of the inner me and the outer me. And I'm in a frame of a movie right now, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Okay. But I know I'm in the movie. Okay.
Yes, you are consciously aware, also a participant. Both at the same time.
Okay. And she says everybody else might be a mannequin that is frozen. Say I leave my apartment, and everybody else is a mannequin until I leave my apartment. And then the film goes to me leaving, and everybody comes to life. Correct?
Yes, but we are all having that very same experience.
Right. Okay. But okay, got it. And then she talks about, and this is what's very interesting, because I know a lot of healers listen to this. She talks about almost another chakra. She calls it a plate, and it's on your back. And she says it doesn't lay on your back. It kind of lays at an angle. And that is where we create outerly. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's the most fascinating part.
It really is. Yes, I'm happy to elaborate on this, because I have just been talking about this with a lot of different people recently, because I just discovered it via Tufti as well. However, this plate is also what Carlos Castaneda called the activation point, or the assemblage point, in one of his books, which I wish I could remember the title of it. If I do remember it, I'll say something. But basically, the idea is that between the back of your shoulder blades, there's what I would call your spiritual antenna. Okay, it's kind of this activation plate, to think of it as a way that links us in from the metaphysical to the physical world. Like a bumper car has that thing that goes up at the top and it touches the metal. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I kind of think of it that way. When I talk to people about it, everyone sort of has their own sensations that they feel about it. I spoke with Jessa about this, and she drew me a picture, which helped me tremendously. Because I think you can kind of visualize it however you want. It doesn't matter. We're all different, and we are all experiencing reality in our own subjective way. So, the point, why get persnickety about whether it's a plate or a braid or this or you know what I mean? It just makes no sense to do that. What a waste of everybody's time.
And
so
in the book,
feel it a certain way,
he uses and in the book they use the word braid, and I think Native Americans use the word braid. Oddly enough, it's right in that same area that when you're on an investigation, I think a little higher on investigation, if you feel that scratch on the back of your neck, which is sort of in that same area, that's when a different entity is trying to enter your body. So it's the same place. Yeah.
That would make another. Yeah, that's just another thing coming together. That would make so much sense. Oh my gosh, I would have never even thought of that, but that makes.
I always have the creepy stuff to add.
Is.
So that's you feel that people say in an investigation, they'll say, I got a scratch on the back of my neck. And if it's not like a different scratch, a burning scratch, which is something else, but when they always have that area, I'm like, step aside and let's get you in a good mood. Let's get your energy back to you. So so this plate or braid or whatever it is, I saw it like a little movie projector. Go ahead. I'll stop interrupting you.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. No, that's really cool. I would have never known about that. So yeah, the way that I kind of see the first time I felt like the crown chakra. Are you familiar with an artist named Daniel Johnston by chance?
Nope. Give us a explanation.
Well, he's a West Virginia guy. He's a singer-songwriter. He's written some of the most moving music ever, but he's not the best musician. He's not a good singer. But he's also an illustrator, and he's also bipolar as well. But he drew a bunch of different drawings with basically the top of people's heads cut off, like the very tippy top, like where your crown chakra goes around. Just imagine that's missing, and there's just like energy just shooting out the top of the head right there. Oh. So a lot of his drawings have that theme in it. And when I talked to Jessa, the way she kind of described the sensation of when she was activating the plate was like this, that around her crown chakra, that's where she definitely had sensation right there, which that linked to and goes down the spine to between the shoulder blades, which is like a Star Wars looking kind of almost thing, right?
Right.
And then when she focuses on it and activates it, then it comes up above her head, and energy just shoots out the top of her head. So that's the way that she sees it. So because we had that conversation, I'm visualizing it that way now, which I don't like. Again, I don't think it matters how. I think the point is that it's a phantom limb. It's a spiritual limb that we've lost. And that's part of that social conditioning and the numbness that we have, spiritually, is that we've lost that sensation. It's like a phantom limb. And that is our activation point. That is the thing that we can use as a tool in the spiritual world to bring us to that next frame. So we are in the frame right now. The problem is, in our current frame, we are trying to change our current frame, and we can't do that. We're stuck here. All the decisions have been made to bring us to the reality that we are in this moment. However, we can project toward the future and change our reality in the future. But yes, we do have to be present in the moment in order to use those visualizations and slides and push those with our activation point into the future. And then those film rolls come toward us next, instead of maybe, let's say, like being negative and giving up. Well, then that just sticks us in that frame, and maybe even makes the upcoming frame more suffering, like just even worse for us.
Okay, and I think I have a good analogy for that, which mixes a little transurfing and that and what you were talking about right there. And then we'll take our break, and then I gotta we're gonna get even deeper. So it's like this. So say I want to move. Okay, so I can see right now, I'm aware I'm in my apartment. I'm going to say something about this because I do want to move for a couple of reasons, but they are not to do with the apartment. There's electrical box too close. There's a lot of traffic. So I don't want to be like, I hate this apartment. It's awful. I got to get you know what I mean? And it's going to be so much better when I get to the next place. That's also not true. I love this apartment, and I find great apartments or guest house wherever I go. So I know that I'm here now, and I want to project me finding that right place in the future. Am I close? Am I on there close?
That I'm getting chills. That's perfect.
Okay.
That's absolutely perfect. And that makes me think of something. So, I can share that now, or we can wait.
Sure. Go ahead. And then we'll take the break after.
Perfect. Okay. So, wherever it is that we start, we have to build abundance in our life. So we have to be able to appreciate what we have to get to the next thing. You can't have gratitude for something you don't yet have. That's not possible. So what we need to do is, and if we're starting at the bottom, it would be really hard. Like the further down you are, the harder it's going to be. But we have to first find something to appreciate. It could be a bird chirping. It could be the ray of the sun, or, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. And then we build on that, and we build on that, and we build on that, and we build on that continuously, up and up and up and up. You're exactly right. If you think I hate this apartment because of this thing and that thing, you're just bringing those things closer to you. The next apartment's going to have the same wonky issue or something like that. Or, like if you hate the rain and then you go to the Caribbean, well, it's probably going to rain while you're in the Caribbean. That's just
right. So it's like, and if you do hate your apartment, you should go, Well, I'm so lucky to have a roof over my head. I'm so lucky I had this time here. So you got to get that. Great. Okay. That sounds perfect. Oh, wow. So you have a story about that.
Well, I just thought about that particular aspect, and that's definitely been something that I've seen the advantage, and I've definitely seen things unfold as a result with my mom specifically. I was just talking to her because she was like, I don't want this and I don't want that, and I'm like, Mom, everything you don't want, you're just stuffing into your pockets. Right. So keep in mind that you just need to find something to be grateful for. And she was in this house. This apartment that was part of a quadruplex, and wasn't very nice. And ultimately, like, we wound up approaching the owner of the house and saying, hey, because there was 3 other apartment units in there. And we were saying, hey, what if we upfit these and put them on Airbnb, and then we'll split the money. So we wound up turning that kind of like dingy apartment into something that made both parties money and was kind of a win-win situation. So we'll rent it out for like weddings and that whole house for like football games and different things like that. So we outfitted it and we did all that part. But had she just been like, well, I hate this place and I'm going to move, then none of that would have happened. So it would have been a big backfire, instead we said, what can we do with this place? How can we optimize it? And it's like a total, it's an old house, but it's like a 9-5 total. So a whole big party, if they're coming into town, they're going to a football game, which is the biggest thing that ever happens here in this town that I live in. Then they can have that whole house. It sleeps like 20 people. The same thing with like a wedding party. So we turned that, by being like, what value does this have? Like, where is the positive? Like, because people didn't want to stay in there long term because of the condition of the house, but the location of it was great. So we're like, we just, put some fresh paint on here, and we didn't do too much, but like put some decent furniture. Well, then it's a perfect little spot for a short-term rental.
Super.
So that's the solution.
That's wonderful. And it's also like, if people have listened, I put up a bonus episode for people who want their apartments cleansed or think they have ghosts in them or spirits and they want to get rid of them. Because one of the things is, in a learning experience, that's what I'm going to call it from now on. I had a very dark experience with the paranormal that we don't want to have again. And in this list of, prayers and incense and all the stuff that I talk to people about to keep the vibration higher, one of the things is, if you can't say a prayer or you can't just find gratitude everywhere, because that is, again, a game changer for your vibration. So, yeah. Okay. Hey, hang on, everybody. We'll be right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the Intuitive Coaching Package. And there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it. We'll get on a call, and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerryHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay, so I have 2 things I have to tell you, Owen, about So she had the plate, and it's very interesting. I don't know if this was the way she said it or what it conducted, but in my parapsychology class, which again is the science, they're trying to do the science, the labs of mediumship, of ghost hunting, and it's real scientists, like right down to the anal complete. You got to get the facts, everything right. So one thing they talk about is spoon bending. Which is kind of I talk a lot about now because I want to have a spoon bending party, and which it's really telekinesis. You're moving something, you're bending something, you're changing something, and it is a real thing that people can do, but it's not what we think. She talks about how your inner intention, you furrow your brow and you're trying to move it with that energy that comes out of your forehead. You're making a funny face kind of thing. And literally when they talk about how it really happens, people that really have bent spoons, which by the way, even the chemistry of the spoon is different when it's bent, through telekinesis. And if you were to bend it with a machine, they can see the difference in the spoon fragments of the metal fragments when it's done correctly. But one of the things they say is it's not about sending energy or trying to move it. It's about seeing it already moved. Like projecting it out that it's already over on that side of the room. And because they're very fact based, they don't do anything with like a theory. They don't say, but they also say the person seems to have a moment where they're sort of in an alternate state. And I think that's jumping realities, like we talk about, like it's shifting from one to the next timeline.
I think I have, like, this is something I've thought a lot about, Karen, because like I would sit and lay in bed and look at the fan blades on my fan and be like, well, how do I move these from here? And so here's kind of how I like to think of it. I think you're exactly right. In the Matrix where the kid's bending the spoon, right? Mm-hmm. Says what? There is no spoon.
There is no spoon.
Bullshit. There are infinite spoons. Infinite spoons in infinite locations. And what we are doing is we are shifting our awareness to different realities, not bending a fucking spoon. So, forgive me for being forceful with that.
No, we're okay here. Yeah.
That's the difference, right? And so that's why transurfing is special, because he says, look, dude, you don't have to create your reality. You don't have to make something out of nothing. It's already there. And as soon as you give up the fight, as soon as you start struggling to get out of this frame, you can create the newest frame. You can create the next thing, the next layer of your world, the next reality that you're going to go into. So you can just literally just go and pick it like as if it were on the shelf, and then it's yours. So that's the way that I like to think about it. Now, to be honest with you, I can't bend a spoon.
Well, you know what? That's
I have no business being that forceful. But it's just our Westernized mentality that kind of gives me a little bit of frustration there, because we all think of things that way, especially through the modern self-help movement.
Well, yeah, and I can't wait to have my professor when I'm done with my classes on my podcast, because the mind over matter stuff, the how we have limited ourselves is unbelievable. And when you hear people in science in the lab that have done tests, our little Western brains are like, really? We can do that?
What?
That's how, yeah, exactly. So here's a funny thing that I'm going to see. You may have a theory on it. You may, because I'm reading, I'm listening to you reading this book of Tufti, and but one of the big things about the paranormal, when people get in it and they sort of, I'll use the term woke. They get woke, which has been watered down. One thing that they realize is, we've been taught it's us and God, and there's a direct line there. You may have some saints or somebody between there, but that's it. And it's the most important, whatever else you think there is, it's just us and him. And then you get into the paranormal, you learn there are layers and there are beings, and there's so much that quite possibly could be between us and God or equal to us or whatever it is. But that's a shock to anyone's system that there's different layers. And sometimes when I listen to her, because Jessa and I kind of have this theory. I have this theory that we're all Westworld. Did you see Westworld on HBO?
You know what? I never saw Westworld.
Okay. I have a feeling that we are the programmed Westworld androids, and other people are running us. And we're starting to wake up, which is obviously the film or the HBO series where the woman is waking up and starting to realize, hey, wait, who programmed that? Who put that in, And I feel the more I listen to her, I feel this pull back to sort of, I can hear the voices of, not like schizophrenically, but like metaphorically, I can hear the Christians that are like, this is not good. Just pray to Jesus. It's almost like the alternate reality is trying to pull me back out of this.
Interesting. Yeah. When he talks about those pendulums too, I'll throw this in there. He doesn't say that they're necessarily, he does talk about how cold and indifferent they are, but I believe the universe is pretty kind of cold, like not in a mean way, cold and indifferent, but it's indifferent. Sure. It just gives you what your reflection is. But the pendulums themselves could potentially be entities. They don't necessarily have to be just energetic structures. Like the way that I try to describe it to my friends, at least in the beginning, is it's like the Nothing in the Never-Ending Story, where when the kids dream, they just make these things bigger. The nothing becomes bigger because they're not dreaming.
And give everybody a quick review of pendulums as you do this.
Sure. So the idea is that where attention goes, energy flows, and our ideas about something collect, and they become energetic informational structures themselves. So basically, like religion or political party or whatever big idea you can think of, especially once it hits critical mass, it's real easy to notice that somebody came up with this idea. It was an individual's idea, but it's grown and blossomed into such a big idea that it basically makes people into its bitch, like a person riding around in a bike with a white shirt on and a tie that's short sleeve, and they knock on people's doors. That wasn't their idea to do that. So they are working on behalf of what Vadim calls a pendulum at that point. And there are sort of bigger pendulums or collections of energy or energetic informational structures, and there are smaller ones too. And they do try to hook into our subconscious. And a lot of times when we get distracted and we're not listening to our own inner voice, it's usually something shiny and external. And a lot of times that's a pendulum. So whatever, movement that pendulum represents, and it does swing, and this is a very complicated, I mean, we could do like probably 10 episodes.
Right. We could do a whole show on this one. Yeah.
But it's these things are, it's a lot of times these things, like when I get into an irritation and I get into a fight with someone, it's like this button that's being pushed, and that's like a pendulum, but it feeds on positive or negative energy. So in a way, Donald Trump is like one of the better transurfers, right? Or Bill Burr.
Right.
Because he's not effective. Bill Burr can go on Conan and talk about the Illuminati. Nobody else could do that. They would be shamed. But what happens is, because Bill Burr is a comic, the pendulum of comedy gets that energy. So not him himself. Had a regular person gone on, a regular celebrity, and said that, then he would be shamed, and all that energy would go directly toward him. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And you know what? I that's a great explanation right there. Another weird, I just got to throw this in because I want people to hear it and think about it. Another pendulum, we're all going to get cancer.
Right.
That's a huge one. Did you beat cancer? Or anytime someone gets something on them, do you think this is cancer? And cancer is a huge pendulum.
It really is. Yeah. Gosh, it's some that horrify my friend. Like I have a friend who's just the sweetest man, and he's the most brilliant, and he's just constantly so stressed out. Luckily, his partner it's his romantic partner and his business partner. They have a production company, and they're incredible. But she's so stable and sturdy that she just keeps him in balance. But he gets so stressed out, and like we're doing improv the other night, and somebody goes, "Ben, what are your 5 worst fears?" Doing the 5 thing or whatever. And his first fear was doing improv.
Oh, that's funny.
But the second one was of course cancer. And we all thought it was funny that the second one was cancer. But yeah, it is a huge pendulum. And one thing that I'll just throw in there too is, they used to tell us that cigarettes, or not us, I mean, some of us, that cigarettes were good for us. One thing I might recommend to people is to maybe turn the Wi-Fi off at night, do some things like that. And maybe, we can have a little bit less radiation, as well as, I know our diets we're malnutritioned in this country as well. So that's another thing. I don't want to get into that.
Right. There's a whole lot of things you can do for self-care that would, And,
right. People do their own research, but just to Just to throw that out there. No, nothing.
Yeah.
And then let's skate on by.
Yes, I know. And so, and yes, and I got you way off track, and I don't want to keep you too long, but because we're coming up on our hour, but we were talking about the pendulum of the old thinking. When I listen to Tufti, the pendulum of someone telling me this doesn't sound right. And it's not me. I know my gut feelings. Like, I wouldn't be this far into the book if I thought it was something negative. Everything in it appeals to me. But I think it's funny that in society, it's like, oh, you better go back to church. Like, that's kind of the pendulum there.
Right. And so, it's just conditioned thinking. And what happens is those pendulums, they want to get as much energy as they possibly can. And they don't care if it's positive or negative. It doesn't matter. All the hate that's aimed at Trump, somehow that's going to a pendulum that's somehow not him personally, right?
So and the love, the two of them, him, the hate and the love is just forcing the pendulum, no matter which side you're on, it's swinging and it's not going anywhere.
That's exactly right. And the second rule, so the first rule of pendulums is to do as I do. That's the first rule of pendulums. Emulate me. Do what I do, right? So as, I'm stepping into comedy, I'm like, oh, well, I have to, do 1,000 open mics and I have to blah, blah, blah. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe there's a different way. And the second rule, because the second rule is that it wants to establish itself. So if you go the way of everyone else, then you never really find your way. I mean, Chris Farley is a great example of someone who's just like his charisma shine. He was himself, and he was rife with problems, sure. But, as far as a person who really just shone and had charm and just like, I can't think of a better example of someone who just like beamed their individuality out off the top of my head.
Right.
So that is what we want to each do, is beam our individuality, because that's where charm comes from. When our heart and our mind are aligned together, that creates, Vadim says, charm, or Vadim. Gosh, I still can't pronounce things.
I know. It's funny. It's so Russian.
Thankfully, I don't think he can speak English, so we should be fine.
Yeah.
But the second rule of the pendulum is to establish itself. So the first idea is to establish this pattern. Oh, you have to do 1,000 open mics, and you have to tell jokes about this, and you have to suck for X amount of time, and blah, 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 blah. And so we eat that. It's like beginner's luck, right? You go up the first time, and it's like, well, that wasn't so bad. I did pretty good. But you didn't realize that you needed to know all these extra things that are going to eventually, you're going to learn, and they're going to weigh you down, and they're going to put you off course, because you're not going inward, right? You're going outward on this path that someone else has laid out for you and says that you have to do this, and this. Not that there's anything wrong with doing those things. It's not like I'm not going to go up, right? Like, I'm still going to go up and do open mics.
Sure, they're guidelines, but the fact that your success is going to rest in a different area than someone who said you have to do 1,000,000 of them. That person will have to do 1,000,000 of them.
Exactly. My path, your path, everyone's path is different. Right. So we're each going to, and especially in comedy, because I really do think it is about discovering yourself. That's one reason that, again, I just adore comics so much, is because they really do explore themselves and dig deep. Even if they're observational, they're still digging deep into something. Right. So I really like that. And the second rule is to establish itself. So there are like extinct pendulums, like I don't know, like old tools, that they're not established anymore. But like Trump, the more energy he gets and the more that pendulum swings back and forth, the more he's established as that figure. And so we've seen this happen with our very eyes over that. I couldn't believe he won, but it made sense to me after he did, because like I asked somebody, I didn't even pay attention to the election when it happened, because I was just like, I'm sure Hillary will win, and I'll just wake up and she'll be president. And I asked my roommate's girlfriend at the time, and she told me it was Trump, and I was like, "You're kidding," because she's funny. And then she was like, "No, I'm serious, dude. It really, really did happen." And
what's interesting too is now that you're saying that, now that I think about it, Hillary would have been an equal pendulum.
Absolutely, yeah. Like any of these figures, it's like their archetype gets the energy and not themselves. Right. So, and one thing that the pendulum does to establish itself is it pushes to the extreme. So whatever movement it is, the hippies or the It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Liberal, Republican, whatever it is. Yeah, millennial, whatever.
Go absolutely to the absolute extreme of that idea before it swings back. So the idea is to establish it as far as possible to the extreme and to push, because that's going to get that polarized energy of people who love it and people who hate it. People are going to be cheering them on, like people in a Coliseum or something. And then there's going to be people who are just mortified. So,
and it's the same energy.
Right. It's the same energy swinging, or it's the same entity that's getting those two energies.
And
it's growing.
A good also example in sort of a micro example in our own lives is gossip.
Sure.
And if it's gossip about you or whatever, but stepping out of it. But it is George Carlin did one of my favorite jokes was everybody was cheering for him and he said, "Oh, you're not cheering for me." And they were like, "Yeah." And he was like, No, you don't understand. There's always going to be one of me. There's the whole world could be exploded and burnt down, and there's 7 guys and 6 of them will be working and one will be looking at it going, that's not right. You're not doing that right. And I thought that is comedy. And another thing that happens when you talk about charm and stuff, and I've seen it a million times in Hollywood, is when you become they always wanted to tell you in comedy you should have a point of view. You should have a point of view. Your point of view develops through you becoming you. I've always said actors are people that are learning to be other people, and comedians are people learning to be themselves. But when somebody tries to get squished into a corner, like you're the astronaut comic or you're the bunny rabbit comic or whatever flash of the day is, or you need to be like this comic, that doesn't work. But yet you can have 2 people that are the same that didn't copy but are being themselves, and it will be equally as successful.
That's a great example, Karen. Yes, I love that. And yeah, that's Pendulum sort of in a nutshell. And that makes, man, I love talking to you and about all of this stuff, because it's just like further reconfirming, and we get to dig a little bit deeper and explore things. And the more people that I get to talk about these topics with, the more I get to understand other people's perspectives of them, because we kind of view them differently, which is cool. And that gives them other nuances and different, points of view and perspectives that we can kind of explore. So,
right. And we wrapped it all up in comedy too.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah, like Chris Farley, not a beautiful person, right, physically, but one of the most radiant, as far as charm goes. And there are countless examples of this. And I guess I'll throw one more thing in as well, just while we're at it, since we might not talk for I don't know, a day or two. One thing I think that happens with a lot of creative people, and one thing that I want to help with, if I can. A lot of us creative people we have depression issues. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens is this: we begin to embark on our creative journey. We see our vision very clearly. We know exactly what we want. And so we start to take steps in that direction, and the world begins to support us. It starts to give us exactly what we want, and things start to line up just as we think they should in our mind. But then something goes a little wonky. And at that point, we all have a decision to make. At that point, we can say, you know what, I'm going to continue on with this vision. I know that's a little wonky, but I'm going to keep taking steps forward. I'm going to try to fix it. And there's got to be, hopefully, a solution to this. Or we can let that just completely derail us. And I think a lot of creatives do, because one thing that's different between The Secret or visualization wise is that we need to visualize the outcome that we want, but not necessarily the chain of events that gets us to it. If we're attached to the chain of events, like A is going to lead to B, and then so-and-so is going to call so-and-so for me, and then they're going to send a letter to Johnny Carson or whatever, that never works that way. Like anything you've ever tried to do, it didn't go step by step the way you thought it would in your mind, even if you did accomplish it.
Right.
So keeping that in mind as creatives, the world is going to support you, but it's also going to play what Vadim calls hide and seek a little bit. So in those moments of uncertainty, he says to keep your arms up in the metaphysical mirror, because there's a delay. There's a time delay in the inert nature of material space, reality. So if you put your arms up in the mirror doesn't immediately reflect what you having the arms up. And and it takes time. But if you will wait and keep your arms up, then ultimately the mirror will reflect. And so Tufti basically says the same thing, but in one word: advantage. Anytime something goes wrong, anytime something goes haywire, anytime something goes wonky or cattywampus or any cool word that you can think of to throw in there, then you just say, you know what, this is to my advantage, right? If I'm like talking to Ben and I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on with the picture? And he's like, dude, I just lost my DP, my director of photography. I don't know how I'm going to, I'm like, well, you know what? It's okay. Or our location falls through, whatever. It's going to be fine. We continue. We're going to continue. We're going to do this thing. And they've had things happen where they'd have somebody just randomly go over to a beach or something, a day early, just like, oh, I'm just going to go over to the beach a day early. And then there's like props and stuff on the beach and they're just hanging out. And then like a cop would pull up to get the stuff. And the person that just happened to randomly go over there to the beach, was like, oh no, actually we're using this for a shoot, actually,
right.
If you don't mind. So then these things start to happen that are kind of like magical. Mm-hmm. If we can hold our arms up and if we can continue to remain focused on the vision. And, I think it's Kill Bill where it's like, they say, if God gets in your way, cut him,
Well, and also just for artists, there's another book that I always recommend called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And one thing about that book is you don't have to be a starving artist or you don't have to have all the drama, just be an artist. For whatever reason, we're programmed that you're going to starve or you're going to be depressed. Don't buy into the program.
Absolutely. That's a great point because we each live, our own different thing. When I was growing up and becoming a musician, I thought, oh, well, I've got to do drugs and I've got to do this and I've got to, but look, Jack White's never smoked a pot in his life. And he's one of the best, rock and rollers that's ever lived. So,
right. And you need a backup plan. No, you don't. All right, Owen. Owen, it's so great to meet you. Owen Hunt, Owen, tell, or Bootsy Greenwood, either one. Owen, tell everyone where to find you, where to follow you. And we're going to all go to that podcast, Reality Transurfing Podcast. Okay. So give everybody your info.
Absolutely, Karen. Thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You can follow me on all the social medias at Bootsy Greenwood. I do not mess with Twitter very much, but I'm on Instagram a fair amount. My YouTube channel personally is Bootsy Greenwood also. And then we just established the Reality Transurfing TV or Transurfing TV on YouTube, where there's going to be a lot of different people teaching these ideas and talking and breaking them down. That you can find. It's a feature channel under my YouTube channel. And you can just search in, Transurfing TV as well. Also go to transurfing.us and you can get a 20-day free email course that will teach you some small concepts in transurfing. And if you want to go even deeper, then that would be the way to get in touch with Renee.
Wonderful. Oh my God. Thank you, my new friend. I'm sure that I'll be talking to you or seeing you in the new comedy or in comedy somewhere very soon. This was fantastic. And I hope you'll come back anytime if you're starting season 2 or whatever is going on. And thanks so much, man.
Oh, the pleasure's mine, Karen. I really want to have you on the Reality Transurfing podcast. So just let me know when, and then we'll set that up. Okay, wonderful. Okay,
and everybody, you can find me, paranormalkaren.com or KarenRontowski.com. You can book a tarot reading. You can check out my calendar. I think I yelled my dates out at the beginning. Please email me. You got a ghost story? You got a doppelganger story? You got anything like that? I'm just getting them in. I know we have, you got to listen. My podcast gets way out there. We love it. Thanks to Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media. Everybody, will see you next week. Oh, give me 5 stars if you can. It really helps out the podcast. Bye.